Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at intermittent emission, a new feature added by the latest build of Command. Now it's worth mentioning at this time that by the time you watch this video, this may have changed a little bit, but I think the basic concept is going to stay pretty similar. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So what is intermittent emission? Well, let's go ahead and show off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab myself this early warning radar. This is an ANTPS 43EF, of course. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the sensor window, and I'm going to go, not the sensor window, I'm going to go to the MCON window. We're going to pop in here, and I'm going to go over to this one that says MCON settings. So we have a couple different things you probably have not seen before. The first one being at the tippy top, we now have this thing that says alert. By the way, if you go to global settings as well, you can come over here and you can see there's an alert. Now, it's worth noting here is if I change this anywhere, it's going to change everybody's settings. So keep that in mind when you're playing with that mode. So what does this do? Basically, you have different modes. So when you change the color, you change what mode I'm on. For example, if I switch to blue mode, it would slip on intermediate mode. Now, normally when you first set this up, you're going to see something that's going to look like this, where everything is just going to say the word continuous. That simply means that run the radar on at all times. But let's say we don't want to do that. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and set up a preset. So I'm going to go to green. Again, remember this for the whole side here. I'm going to go ahead and activate the radar. This is important that you do allow it. And then I'm going to come down to where it says continuous. And now we have our intermittent options. First one is how long does it run? Now, this is an important number, and I'll show you why it's an important number. If you go to the actual radar itself, again, it's a TIPS 43, and I come down to it, it says its scan interval is 10, meaning it takes 10 seconds to scan the entire sky, which means if your mission duration is less than that number, that means potentially you're not going to see the entire sky with your rotation. Now, I know there's some people who would do really silly things like set this to 1 and do an interval of 2, and like go blink, 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 or something like that. That probably works okay with a phased radar, but again, it's not going to do much for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set the duration to 10 seconds. So it's going to run just long enough to sweep the sky once. The next number is going to be how long I wait while the radar is off. So in this case, because this is going to be green, I'll go ahead and set this to 30 seconds. The last one is going to be an interval random in variation. Again, this is adding here. This is if you want to add a little bit of randomness to it to make it more difficult to calculate. Now, the interval here, I really recommend that you make these intervals smart. One of the things I did when I was playing with this is I was actually able to predict the interval of the system because I could measure it. So what you can do here, and I've seen some people do this very aggressively, is you can set this to 20 and you can set this to 10, which means it gives us anything between 21 and 31 seconds here, which is a pretty, actually, I believe it starts at 0. So anywhere between 20 and 30 seconds. The last thing we're going to see here is wake when detecting threats. If you pick up some kind of a target that gets very, very close by and we need to identify it, this is obviously not really relevant for my tips, but obviously if I was a SAM, we could do this differently. We can actually have it wake when it detects a threat. So in this case, it's going to detect a threat no matter what, so I'm not really caring about that too much. So when we are on green and I'm set to active, this aircraft, I should say this radar, will run for 10, and then between 20 and 30 seconds, go ahead and continue. So let's go ahead and just demonstrate this. So what you see here, and it's very, very, very difficult to see. Let me see if I could zoom out just right. There we go. You can see the emitting 0 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press play, and it's going to go ahead and say the radar is running silently for a total of 20 seconds. I'll go ahead and speed up time a little bit here. It's going to get down to the bottom of its piece here, and it's going to go click and start emitting for 10 seconds. So the radar now has just gotten booted up. It's doing a slow sweep of the entire sky. And what we're hoping is it does is it detects, oh, hey, look at that, with 2 seconds to spare. So now the radar is going to go ahead and silence itself again and come back in a few seconds. So now notice this target we acquired like basically 10 seconds ago when we were doing one of our sweeps. So now what's going to happen is the radar is going to sit here nice and calmly, nice and coolly, sitting away, just time is ticking, time keeps on ticking, ticking. It's going to emit again, so it's going to scan the entire sky, and we expect somewhere around probably between 7, 8, 9 seconds of that to suddenly reacquire this target here. And voila, you can see when the radar bops into this part of the sky, we get a good look at him. And if you actually look carefully, you'll notice the interval between this one and the interval between this one is exactly 30 seconds, which is how long it took us to emit, as well as how long it took us to sleep. Now keep in mind, the guy on the other side knows this too. Let me show you what I mean. So if I'm sitting here, obviously I'm a Tupolev 16K, I don't have the most sophisticated ESM system. Now we do, it's just not that sophisticated. So we'll go ahead and grab that and improve the quality of my ESM. Let's go ahead and get a generic ESM. We'll go ahead and make that a 2020s ESM here. So it's going to be a pretty good quality ESM here. Whoop, I gotta love that new right click. And notice we immediately identified a target 4 seconds ago. That is our good old-fashioned TPS. We haven't identified it yet. Pretty much at this point, we're going to sit here and take a few minutes to identify its frequency and its spectrum, its PRF, and we're going to try to catalog it against all possible radars. So again, time's passing here, time's passing. We haven't picked it up again. Oh, there it is again. And now notice there is an interval of time between these two when we apply the initial detection to when we get the update. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward time a little bit here. And let's get ourselves one more update. Bingo. So you can see now that we're getting these updates every once in a while. We're basically guesstimating how far away it is. And noticing that our time versus our actual time emitting is slightly different each time because of that little random interval that you see here. So in this case, I know he's down there, but it's going to take me a little bit more effort than usual to be able to pinpoint his exact location, because now I have to deal with a target that shuts his radar off every once in a while. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple extensions of this. So let's go grab our radar one more time here. And let's say we want to design a radar setting where he does not operate at all when he's on green mode. So let's say that he's on green and we're just going to tell him to shut off. So how would you do that? Well, you can do a little bit. Just set this to 0. And then what you could do for the interval is you set that to 60 seconds like that. So now what's going to happen is it's going to be off for 60 seconds, it's going to emit for 0 seconds, and it's going to be off for 60 seconds again. So if I actually close this, you're going to watch the silent time tick down, and then it goes right back up to whatever the previous time is. Now, let's say we want to create a new system. By the way, when you do this, make sure you press the Enter key. Otherwise, you're going to get some shenanigans and goings-ons when you do that. So let's create a new preset called Continuous. So I'm going to come in here, and we're going to make this like exactly what we had before. We'll do 10, 20, and we'll do 2 sound. We'll do a 5-second variation. And we'll also leave wake when detecting threat off because, again, it doesn't matter because we're already running. So let's create a yellow mode that's going to be very, very aggressive. So we're going to emit for 10, we're going to be off for 5, and we're going to do 0. We're not going to do any of this. So this is a very, very fast. We'll go to orange mode, and let's assume emission time is going to be 50 seconds with a 10-second pause in between. Again, just to kind of mess up people. I'll shut this one off because we don't need it. Red mode will be continuous. And by the way, if you want to create a custom one, you can click Use Custom Preset Only. This overrides all of these settings. So now, how do we tweak this? Well, take a look. So right now we are in silent mode, and at the end of the 30 seconds, I'll go ahead and fast forward here so you can see it. You can see we emitted for a millisecond, not even. And now we're back silent. So let's go ahead and crank up the alert level. Perhaps I detected something. So I'm going to go back to my doctrine side, press green. I'm going to set it right to yellow. So what's going to happen now is he's going to finish his countdown, and then he's going to go ahead and engage his yellow procedure. So now notice he's emitting for 10 seconds, and at the end of that 10 seconds, there he is. We spot that bogey for just a moment, able to reacquire him. The radar, again, is still going to be running, and then they're going to pause for only 5 seconds and then flip it back on, just like our preset enables. Now let's say we want to go to, condition red here. So we'll go right up to condition red. And what's going to happen now is the radar is immediately going to flip to continuous emission. You can actually see here it is now running full blast all the time. And at any point, of course, I could pop back in here and say, oh, then just kidding. Go back to orange mode. But you can see now we still have a good view of the entire sky. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, if you time these things correctly, you could actually get them to work off of each other. Yeah, you definitely could. Let me show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to my doctrine and emissions here. We're going to kind of order everybody into condition yellow. That was just fine. And we're going to grab this guy right here. And we're going to go ahead and dial in a thing for his yellow. So for yellow, we're going to go ahead and order him to do, let's see here, yellow for this guy. Let's go ahead and check it real fast. The tips, let's see what the tips is here. The tips for the yellow is 10, 5, 0. So I'm going to go set 10, enter, 5, enter, 0. Now you're going, okay, so what's your point here? Well, let me show you. Watch this. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to take a look at these two these two things. Notice, by the way, he's emitting. So he's going to go silent for a few moments, and that's going to be it. By the way, I can shut off the inherit here if I had to, and I kind of disable that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let him finish his little emissions here. And what you're probably noticing is these are now all of sync with each other. You're noticing that the one on the left is emitting for a little bit, then he triggers it again. Then the one over here is emitting for a bit, and then he gets triggered again as well. Now, the reason that's useful is we can now use them as a way to counteract each other. For example, I could have this one emit for 20 and be silent for 10. I could have this one emit for 20 and then emit for 10 and then be silent for 20. And by doing so, you basically create an interesting little situation where both of these two radars here are now going to be working opposite each other. So again, this one will get going. You can see one of them is emitting now, the other one's silent, the other one's silent, now this one's silent, now this one's emitting, now this one's emitting, now this one's silent. And by doing so, you create an amazing situation. This little situation where you have the ability to actually kind of tweak the radar settings in order to make it very difficult to acquire. So you can see this is already a pretty valuable, useful feature. And again, one of the things I think is a little weird about it is that you have to set this globally. The other thing too is we'll actually set this to yellow right now, because that way it actually follows the preset. Actually, I'm sorry, this is the wrong team. This is the other team. That's their version of yellow. We'd have to come over here and set these guys to yellow to go ahead and make sure they actually behave in that particular sense. So again, you can see this is a great way to kind of have little pop-up radars, kind of simulating an integrated air defense system. And obviously you can control a lot of this through Lua as well if you want to get very, very aggressive with it. But other than that, enjoy.